greatness to me is maximizing your mental, spiritual, and physical potential. That's greatness. Greatness isn't an outcome. Greatness isn't achieving a goal. Greatness is continually maximizing your physical, mental, and spiritual potential and never stopping. So in essence, you'll never reach greatness. It's an unreachable space, but it's somewhere that you want to go every single day, and the level at which you output is dictated by how much you want to invest into your potential.
What's going on, Pushin Performance family? Solo dolo today, no Phil to rock with me, but I'm going to do my best to intro this exciting episode that I had with Coach Mike G, Mr. Do It Moving, GBG Hoops. Follow those Instagram handles, follow their YouTube, download the app, because there's so much knowledge, so much value that you'll get from it. But specifically, this conversation I'm excited for. We talk about what Mike G's been up to, what his training philosophy is, where his creativity is coming from, his training methods, his experience in his 10 years plus of training high-level athletes in the NBA, tennis. We got names like Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, Mike James, just to name a few. But all of that to really say he's been around in the industry, and he currently works high-level individuals and trains humans at a very high level. So we get into just his brain, his thoughts, and it's really valuable for me to hear and understand how he thinks about things, provoke thought, and ask more questions. So GBG, greatness breeds greatness. We define greatness in this. So yeah, listen up, man. Get a pen, a pencil, write some notes on this, because I'm going to listen to it again for sure. But let's jump into it. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you, man.
I like to come on these, obviously, for selfish reasons, but also to, if you talk to 1,000 people or 5,000 people, however many people listen to this, and I can change one person for the better, like, it was worth it. So that's what this is about.
100%, 100%. But like, I know you've been on the road, around the globe, different time zones. Where's your energy been the past few weeks anyway?
Lately, it's so, because I'm so well traveled, the 3 hour time differences from East Coast to West Coast don't affect me as much these days. I feel like if we go from East to West, I utilize the extra time in a very productive way that allows me to get more work done, which, depending on who you ask, could be a bad thing just because we're working too much. But more or less, when we go from West to East and we lose that time, and a flight that's 3 hours turns into a 6 hour time loss, now those are the moments that you kind of got to plan for, and you have to subscribe to strategies and methods that allow you to bounce back. But for the most part, from East to West, West to East, intercontinentally, within the US, I'm pretty good about. But the long scale travel, there are so many resources and education pieces out there on the internet to find ways to stave off jet lag, that we've been experimenting with those little opportunities, and we see some pretty good results. So just trying to figure out how to live in the time zone that you're traveling to 3 to 4 days before you go is something that has helped us in the past, and that's what we continue to strive for. But sometimes you just don't have time to prepare, and you just got to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, other than the standards that you read online and whatnot, anything stick out to you that you've tried yourself that's just like, oh, I'm locked in, this thing works for me?
Yeah,
As far as like a time zone difference
I've
perspective.
had a few companies reach out to me with these devices that simulate sunlight through like a face mask product, and basically you put them on when you go to sleep on the flight, and while you're sleeping the lights will turn on so that your eyes are registering blue light or some degree of sunlight, if you will. But
Hmm.
I think that that technology is a little ahead of itself. You also have to take into the consideration of just the human element of who's going to really use these things and be on top of it. It did work, but I haven't used it consecutively enough or consistent enough to have a solid input about it. But the
Yeah.
things that I think have been pretty rock steady for us is wherever we end up, we got to move and we got to get sunlight. And if you can do those things right away, fresh off the flight, obviously, if you land at nighttime, you can't do those things. But if you land during the day and you do a good job of getting some quality time in the sunlight, and then maybe moving while you're getting quality time in the sunlight, going for a jog or doing some calisthenics, that's been something that's been very effective for us. And when I say us, I
Okay.
mean my wife and I, because we do a lot of
Yeah.
traveling together, we work together, we own our business together. So she's
Right.
in for the workouts as well, as long
For
as we
sure.
can stave off this jet lag, because it sucks to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, pitch blackout, and you can't fall back asleep. So
Yeah, for sure. It's funny when you say all that stuff, like where people like this is very specific to people who travel, but a lot of people are like naturally jet lagged anyway because their sleep rhythm is just not locked in anyway. So a lot of this
yeah,
stuff is very applicable for people who are just not locked in
right.
their you know circadian
Period.
of sleep. Yeah.
Right.
So
Going to bed
that,
at around the same time and waking up around the same time daily is something that very, very few people do. As a regular person would kind of look at their weekly schedule. It gets thrown off Friday, Saturday, you know what I mean? And then sleep all day Sunday because people are social. And that's just kind of the rhythm that we've been living in since the dawn of day. But it's powerful and it does make a difference. And, all the heavy hitters talk about it on their podcast. So,
Mhm.
it's for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we kind of just jumped straight into things, but something I want to definitely call out is, I've been following you for a minute now, and when I scroll through, I'm like, oh, this dude kind of looks like me, and not a lot of people do, right? Or
Absolutely.
Asians are very
Shout out to the
Asians are
Asian group.
very, it's a low percentage in the space, which I think someone like you
Yeah,
who does it at a very high level. It is something that I appreciate, and for a lot of our listeners who are not as familiar with your work, I think for me, I'm just curious to hear like where your inspirations or influences came on early on, or and even currently. Any names, any people, courses that come top of mind for you?
yeah. Short story based off of what you opened this subject matter with was there's not a lot of people out there that look like us in this space. So when you reached out, that already was a reason for me to jump on beyond who you are as a coach, as a podcaster, and the amazing things that you're doing. But I was at the Chris Paul Elite camp in Vegas last week, who also shares the platform with Jason Tatum because they're both Brand Jordan. And
Hmm.
Jason Tatum's full time trainer slash PT is also an Asian gentleman. So, he and I immediately connected and bonded just off the strength of the fact that there's not a lot of people in this field that look like us. So it's a special thing to see people in such a high regard, working with people in a high regard, like a Jason Tatum, to represent for the Asian community, because we got to keep pushing the envelope. We got to keep reaching back and pulling forward. So I think that it's really important that we do so. As far as influences and things people that have inspired me, not too many Asian people. And that's simply because there's not too many that exist before me, right? And that's okay. But you and I are changing that landscape, and we're going to continue to drive that momentum forward and reach out and help people. However, I do want to make sure I mention the people that have inspired me, even though they're not Asian. And the gentleman that comes to mind is Michelle Dalcourt, who is the inventor of Viper. and Viper is the rubber tubes that you can find in Equinox, and you'll see them in a lot of my content because I just love the training philosophy of movement and three-dimensional movement at that. So you're able to load 3D movement really well, and that's how we move in space as athletes and as humans. So it just makes sense that this tool has been a big part of my development. And under Michelle is a gentleman by the name of Scott Mitchell, who also was a big inspiration, laid the foundation for my movement and training philosophy, and again speaks from the same movement theory of human beings do move in the linear plane, but we mainly operate in the rotational and frontal planes as well. So if that's the case, then why are we just training in a straight line with weights? Why aren't we training in rotation? Why aren't we training with lateral deceleration and acceleration, mass and momentum? So those are the two guys that stick out in my mind as far as inspiring who I am as a coach, as a performance coach. But beyond them, as far as philosophy goes, there's so many gentlemen that and women that come to mind that I wouldn't do justice if I mentioned anybody else because I would miss somebody. So I'm not even going to try. And it's just basically having the open mindedness that there are so many amazing coaches out there that can touch you in a way that leaves a longing and lasting impression. And as long as you're open to it, you'll grow. And that's the point that I'm trying to drive is that this field is so young. We're 50, 60 years old. Be open minded because it's changing all the time, and you never know what theory or philosophy or concept is going to jump at you next, and actually could have a positive impact on the way you work with people as well. So that's what I like to say to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's something I appreciate about you a lot is like your open-mindedness, honestly, and that's something people attribute me about, and I like to like say thank you. I appreciate it. It's not always easy to, but people like you and hearing others do that, it just is very contagious, right? So I try to
Yeah.
do that as much as possible. So definitely, if there's one takeaway, man, that's a big one. Just be
Oh yeah.
open. Like you said, we're a young space. You can learn something from anyone, and
Anybody.
when you came through my feed, I'm like, man, obviously, yeah, he's Asian, he's cool, he's working with some NBA players, that's cool. But what really stuck out to me was like your ability to communicate movement in a very diverse way. Like your words are very intentful, right?
Mm,
And it doesn't nothing goes to where it's like it's just just white noise. So and that really
sure.
I see that right in your players, and I'm just curious of like were you always that smart, bro? Like, how these stuff come to your brain, and like, how does it? I think it plays into your creativity of movement too.
Yeah.
But yeah, just wanted to hear you like kind of speak to that. And how'd you get to that?
Well, number one, thank you for those compliments. That actually has never been said to me in like an eloquent way like that. So that's really cool that people think that about the way I coach. And I think communication and the soft skills of coaching are not as spoken about or talked about as much as they should in whatever platform that people are consuming information, albeit social media, YouTube, etc. So to be able to speak about this means a lot to me because first of all, let me give credit to who has shaped me the most in this area. And I don't really even know him personally all that much. I met him a couple times, but we don't talk. But the man is Nick Winkelman. And the book that he wrote that has been so impactful to
Language of coaching.
The Language of Coaching. Boom. Nick Winkelman, The Language of Coaching.
Got it.
He broke onto the surface of my radar before social media when actual books were printed and read through Athletes Performance Institute, which is now known as Exos. And he was heavy in the NFL combine preparation. And at the time, I was very um, my desire to train within that space, specifically NFL combine prep, was so high because I played football, I played college football. So there was a bit of piece of me that was a part of that. But he ran one of the country's best NFL combine prep programs at Exos. So there had to be something special over there. I had to figure it out. Like, why are all these guys running so fast? And one of the quotes that he said is, you could have 10, you could have one program, right? One program, same reps, same volumes, same exercises. Obviously, intensities will be different based off of whoever's in front of you, but let's just say it's the same athletes, same intensities, and you'll have 10 different results if it's executed by 10 different coaches. And in other words, he's basically trying to say that the way we execute our communication and coaching as far as delivering the information is going to get different aptitudes and amplitudes of intention from athletes. So, if if I step into a room full of athletes that aren't quite motivated for whatever reason, maybe they're just tired, they're overworked, they're fatigued, and I wear the energy of the room and I execute my session based off of that versus someone that comes into the room, you know, has a ton of energy, can somehow pick these players up, they're going to get a little more juice out of the lemon than versus if I were not as energetic. So, he changed the mindset of like how we approach coaching, how we deliver messages, how we paint pictures with our words matters. And that totally can dictate us the success of a training program or the more success of, because just because you're not super energetic doesn't mean you're not going to be an amazing coach. However, it does have a difference and it does play a part in being able to motivate. Like, that is our job, to pick people up. Sometimes you do have days where you allow athletes to be in the frame of mind that they're in, and that's a strategic decision. But I do think that we as coaches have to have the same energy when we walk into the room every single day so that it's consistent. Athletes know exactly what they're getting when they walk into the room, whether they're ready for it or not. And then it's our job as coaches to like be a dimmer switch on the light and know when to push and know when to kind of just exist. So, that being all said, I think that has had the biggest influence on the way I deliver messaging, how I deliver it, with what type of energy I deliver, reading the room, understanding who's in front of me. Is this athlete responding to my energy, or is this athlete being beat up by my energy? Sometimes you could beat someone up with your energy and then they kind of tune you out. So, do we have those skills to understand and have the wherewithal and emotional intelligence to apply what we need to apply? And Nick Winkelman has been a big part of my thinking when it comes to that. Understanding emotional intelligence is something that we must do as human beings in general, not just coaches. And I would encourage anybody and everybody that if you work with people, EI is extremely, extremely critical. We have our IQ and we have our EQ. And I would argue that EQ is actually more valuable than IQ.
Yeah, facts. No, I mean that's well said. With you, like I know you claim to be a rah-rah person, which you are, but it's different, from
Yeah,
what you hear a lot of rah-rah coaches to be to where it's a different energy, right? Not say it's better or worse, but with your energy and your EQ that you currently have, is that something you worked on, or like prior, where you like did you not have it and then you built to it, or you're born with it?
100%, man. Like, this is the area of space that I've grown the most as a man, as a human being, because early on in my coaching career, I would lose my voice all the time. And that's a problem. If you can't talk, literally, physically, because your vocal cords are so inflamed of you yelling all the time, then you can't really execute your job properly. And my mentor, Scott Mitchell, was like, "Hey, I love your energy. I think it's one of your strengths, but know how to dial it up and dial it down, right? Know when to turn the music down so that you can coach and have the floor, command the floor, use that energy to command the floor, but you don't always have to yell at people." And I think a lot of that comes from my football background always being energetic, always being hype, always being an emotional leader on every team that I was on. Don't know where that came from, but for some reason, that's kind of where I could be myself as an Asian football player, right? And people responded to it, right? So as we are shaped by our experiences that are successful, I applied that to my coaching opportunities early on in my career, and just found that, based off of feedback, pro athlete feedback, like, Mike G, you don't always have to yell at me, bro. Like, I can hear you, I'm with you, and I know you're coming from a good place, but read the room, right? So that is something that I have consistently worked on throughout every single year of my coaching. I'm in year 16 now. And, even just as it applies to being a husband, as it applies to being a father soon, I'm about to be a father, in a few months. This is a valuable
Yes.
skill to have that thank you. You can definitely apply to every category of life, as a manager, as a business owner, as someone that oversees employees. Even, how about this? How about when you're at a restaurant and your waitress or waiter, your server, is rude? Now, is it our job to correct the rudeness, or is it our job to think about where that person is coming from? We don't know where he or she just left from. We don't know what just type of news that they had. We don't know. You don't know people's story, right? You just see the outcome of it. And quite frankly, in my opinion, at the end of the day, as long as my food is warm or hot and it tastes good, service, is something that you can let people slide on. But I've seen like full-fledged arguments and damn near physical fights over bad service, and I'm just like, who is that worth my time, and is that really worth their time? And I think that, something as simple as that could save valuable time on your clock. Because at the end of the day, we're always consistently fighting stress, right? And the less stress that we can incur, the more life we're going to live at a happy, consistent level. So there
Yeah.
you have it.
Yeah. That's so many lessons within them, and it's tough. Like what you're saying, you've sharpened that skill of the
Mm.
empathetic, part of the brain where at some point for me, I'm like, man, why am I mad? I'm thinking about myself. That's why. Like I don't care about this dude right in front of me, right?
Why am I
It's
mad?
because I'm
Exactly.
it's because I'm thinking about myself, so I don't really care about what that person's thinking. For me, I'm like, I
Facts.
don't like that energy, right? So I
Yep,
think that's a valuable skill to
for
have, like
sure.
as a human being. Like I know coaches are listening to this, but as a human being, no matter
Yes.
who you are, we got to do that. Like that's something, just like you said, reduce the stress that we incur,
Yeah.
that we often make ourselves sometimes,
Yeah. Life
right?
is too short to worry about things that, quite frankly, could just roll off your shoulders. Um,
Yeah,
if if you always have a point to prove, we have to look. We got to look within ourselves. Honestly, like, why am I always trying to prove my points? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, why
yeah,
do I really care? And then also, why am I getting upset if I don't get my point across, or if you don't
right,
agree with my point? So,
yeah.
that's been a journey for me as well. 100%.
And as a young coach, is that something you had to work through? Like, did you have to? Like, I'd imagine, like, sh- how tall are you again, Mike? I met you in person. I forgot.
A
You
whopping 5'8".
5'8", right? And I know you have your background of first training professional tennis and
Yeah,
whatnot. And
yeah.
when you get your first NBA player, I can't recall the name. You can remind me. You looking straight up. Is there
Yeah.
an ego in there that you were like,
Oh yeah,
yo, I gotta prove something? Like, how did you,
yeah,
or
yeah.
did you have that emotion, or is there something that you had to work through when you do that, when you started that?
So this came from this part of me. This maturation process came from the pro feedback that I spoke of earlier. Was, we have anonymous um, Google Sheets, or things of that nature that kind of rate your coaching performance, or things of that nature, just to kind of get quality and honest feedback, which I think is very important. It's okay to, like, let yourself be vulnerable at times. And there were a couple comments that players would say about me early on was that they felt like I was trying to compete with them. Yeah,
Hmm.
crazy, right? And like,
In what way?
exactly, right? Like in retrospect, I know what way, but at the time I'm thinking I don't understand this feedback
Hmm.
because all I wanted to do was make these guys better. But as I internalized it, thought about it, tried to get other people's feedback from it, people who are close to me that aren't afraid to tell me the truth, that ego, that E word, ego, is something that will show its face if you feel like you're not heard or respected. So, as a 5'8" performance coach who is Asian, who's always been overlooked as an athlete, who's always had his chip on his shoulder, who's always had to prove himself time and time and time again. Of course, right? Like this, again, these are our experiences that shape and mold us throughout the lifespan that are always going to be emotionally attached to us. So as soon as I felt unseen, disregarded, or just unheard, what would I do? Turn up. And that was perceived as not quality, energetic coaching, but as, oh, he's just trying to show me up, or he's trying to single me out, or he's trying to
Hmm.
present an environment that isn't going to develop me in a positive way, which is where that feedback came from. Now, at the time, my ego was like, man, what? Right? But again, it takes a grown up, a mature adult to listen to feedback, internalize it, reflect on it, and accept it. And I accept it. And now, sometimes I might be too egoless. And what I what I mean by that is if I'm with a player and he governs the ship in terms of what type of energy he wants to bring into the room, etc. I govern the ship in terms of the direction of the ship. But in my past, I would expect someone to come to the gym or the training space with this I want to get better type feel, right? This I'm ready, coach. Put me in the game, coach. But that's just not realistic. So when an athlete comes into the room and I can read that they're not quite at a really high emotional charged up level, I'm going to probably scale down more than I will to scale up. And then just look for certain cues that allow me to turn up if I need to. But rarely, very rarely will you hear me get loud in a training session these days because the demographic that I work with, NBA basketball players, they just don't respond well to that or don't care to hear that. And when I say respond well, it means it doesn't make them better. Like it doesn't charge them up for me to like get hype. Whereas football players, they get charged up.
Hmm.
So, you know, I'm more equipped and better in tune of how to approach these athletes based off of again experience. So it's
Yeah.
been very valuable for me to be open to this type of criticism and feedback.
Sure. But when you say egoless, what do you mean? Because for me, I'm like sometimes I'm like that too. What do you mean by that?
I mean exactly the opposite of what those players introduced to my mind space, to my
Hmm.
mental atmosphere was you don't want to do single leg split squat. Okay, no problem. Let's try this. Versus, nah, bro, the split squat is where it's at. You need to do it. You need it because of this. You need it because of that. You need it. You see the difference? I'm
Yeah.
trying to I'm trying to fit this exercise. No, I'm trying to fit this athlete into this exercise because I
Sure.
want him to versus let me find the workaround. Let me find the alternative that does the same thing. It's just a different delivery. It's a different
Yeah.
way to consume that stimuli, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I'm in a service based industry, meaning I serve you. It is my job to put you and your mind and in your body in the best space and environment possible to succeed. So if the
Right.
split squat is not it today, then we're going to do something else.
Right.
We might hop on the hack squat. We might get in the leg press. We might do a Smith machine, whatever it is. Like, again, maybe I'm more equipped to have that quick thinking. Boom, boom, boom. Like, okay, you don't want to do that, then let's do this. But no problem, no sweat. Hey, my G, my shoulder, bro. I can't put my arms. Cool, let's do safety bar. Versus, you being a bitch. You know what I'm saying? It's different. Like,
Yep. Yeah.
and that's not the way we should ever be approaching athletes. You know, I don't care who you are, what level you work with. Like, you should never allow yourself to get offended by anything the athlete presents. Now, obviously, you do just have bad people, right? And it's our job whether or not we want to work with them. You know, hopefully you have that liberty. However, 9 times out of 10, you're working with someone that you want to work with. If they ask you or tell you that they can't do something or they would rather do something else, figure that out and
Yeah.
remove your ego.
And there's probably a reason why they're saying that, right? They're not just saying it just to say it. Right? I don't want to do split spot. You might not hear why, but like maybe their knees busting. They didn't tell you that early, right? So no,
90% of the
that's
time.
a very valuable um, proverb, if you will, that I wish I listened to before, because like that was the blinder for me, right? My ego
Yeah.
was just like, I'm the coach, I'm the
That's,
man to
that's
tell
right.
people what to do, right? And you're here
I'm the
for my
coach.
class, and it's tough to get over that, right? Where like
Yeah.
that statement that you mentioned, where we're here to serve. Unfortunately, it didn't click in my head till later. I don't know why, but I think that's what's really the limiting factor for a lot of coaches. Of like, you forget the word coach is a guider, right? We guide people. But
That's right.
why do you think like I don't know if you had that same experience, but is there what do you suggest like for coaches who might not even understand that yet, of like we're here to serve? Is there something that you feel that was valuable for you to get to that point?
I think that when I think about when I was an athlete, right? How did I want to be coached? How did I receive information? Now, you and I are coaches for a reason. We were probably highly motivated, self-motivated individuals, as are most coaches, to get under a heavy bar, to work out until you almost throw up. Like we're just wired that way, which is why we coach. But being able to recall on like who are the coaches that I gravitated to the most and why was that? And I think that they were mostly the types of people that I felt care from. I felt like they were singling me out of this, 50, 60, 70 player team and making me feel like the coaching was specific to me. It wasn't. It was just good coaching. It was a watchful eye. It was very empathetic communication. Not saying soft by any means, but like, just putting themselves in my shoes and trying to help me understand why this is the way it should be, whatever it was on the football field or in the weight room. And then the coaches that I didn't gravitate towards, they were just people that blurted out information into the room, were the people that didn't really engage in conversation with me, didn't do what they were asking me to do. Like, can you actually perform these movements and impress me? Like, can you show me what you want? They didn't know how to do that. And as it relates to like how I always wanted to be received, I think that was what really resonated with me, was how did I want to be coached, from who did I gravitate to the most, and who could actually perform the movements that they were asking me to do. So when you recall into your own coaching journey and you revisit the individuals that really had an impact on you as an athlete, or in your experience with sport, or being coached, I think that that's a thought that we don't really think about. Like, who are
Yeah.
the coaches that really helped us develop as athletes, as movers, and use the things that you gravitated towards most in your repertoire and make it your own.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I remember listening to recording, as I was just running through your stuff that you've done on YouTube with other podcasters. The five people you're around, right, is your who you are essentially, right?
Yeah,
You're the average of five people. And when you
yeah,
said that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. I've heard that a long time ago, but I think it's always valuable to repeat over and over again. And for me, I'm like, I don't really hang out with a lot of people, but in social media, we hang around with a lot of people, right? With the ears, who we see, who we read, those are the people we hang out with, right? So
yeah,
it's valuable to really think back even of the coaches, like you said,
yeah,
to see who influences you and who currently influences you, because that's actually who's shaping us and giving us the values that we have. So that's something that
yeah.
stood out to me again now when you said that. So even more so now.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I have to talk about who that is for me, and his name is Mark Survey, and he coached me in junior college just for 1 year. My freshman year in junior college, I played at L.A. Pierce in L.A. in Los Angeles. I was a receiver, and he recruited me, and to this day we have a relationship. And I vividly remember, and I was 18. I'm about to be 40. This was over 20 years ago. I remember like it was yesterday. We were suiting up for a game, and he was more hyped than us as players. And he's coaching, he's calling plays. And I remember him jumping up and down in the locker room, really excited. And that immediately raised my level. Like, the energy that you put into the environment can literally change physiology for other people around you in a good way and in a bad way. So when I think about that, which GBG is basically what that is, greatness breeds greatness. He was GBG in me, and he wasn't even trying to. He was in his little corner, putting his slacks on, putting his polo on, what coaches wear on the sideline, jumping up and down like hype. And that immediately got me hype. And that can come in so many different shapes, fashions, and forms. And if you know how to manipulate that for people in the room, in every single room that you step into, you're going to have an impact on the world. And that's what my mission is, bro. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. Every time I step into a room, I want to help somebody in a positive way. I want to GBGify them.
Yeah.
And hopefully
Yeah.
we're doing that with our app. Hopefully we're doing that with our coaching. We're going to build so much, integration into this model, but that's what that is, man. And that's what's so important about understanding the power of energy and how you can transmit that.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's a bar. And before we jump straight into that, which I definitely want to land this plane with the GBG Hoops app. With when you say greatness, what does that mean for you? People have different
Yeah,
definitions, but I'm curious what you would define that to be.
nobody's ever asked that to me before, and I'm going to just go off the top. Greatness to me is maximizing your mental, spiritual, and physical potential. That's greatness. Greatness isn't an outcome. Greatness isn't achieving a goal. Greatness is continually maximizing your physical, mental, and spiritual potential, and never stopping. So in essence, you'll never reach greatness. It's it's an unreachable space, but it's somewhere that you want to go every single day, and the level at which you output is dictated by how much you want to invest into your potential.
Yeah, man. I never heard anybody define it like that, but that's very well said. And obviously, if you see my above my head, you got Kobe in the back, and he's been probably the biggest influence as a lot of Filipinos. But uh, for me personally, it's like a lot of what he spoke to, towards the end of his career and even after is very similar to what you just said. And I think which I naturally gravitate to a lot of your content because of that, right? Because you embody it, you speak to it a lot, and that's GBG is like something that means more now for me
Yeah.
because of that. So I appreciate that. But before we jump into the app, I'd be remiss if we don't talk about training to some degree. I feel like I could just talk like to you for hours. But with in regards to the you go back to you mentioned the Vipers that you work with, and
Yep.
your I mentioned your creative ways to describe movement, which I know your influence with Thomas Myers, with fascial
Yep.
lines. I know you mentioned that. Um, what are your creative movements? I'm locked into the Hoops app, and I've just learned so much as a coach to help with myself. I tore my
Yeah.
Achilles, a few months ago, and that's been something that's been a lot of the movements there. Thank you for your attendant level 1 stuff has been very helpful. But yeah, how do you get your creativity? Where do you get your creativity?
Yeah.
And two,
Yeah.
we don't really see all the traditional stuff as much on quote unquote whatever you would deem as traditional strength training on the content, which you probably have your own reasons. But where does that play into, and if it does play into like programming for your clientele?
So I'm at a point in my career where the creativity piece is developed and inspired from a goal or a stressor or demand that we are trying to be resilient against. And it's very it's simple, but it's complex. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. It's simple because if you understand biomechanics and physics, you will understand how to how my mind goes in this direction. Secondarily, no idea is original. As much credit as anyone would like to give me for the creativity, they should not, because it's an iteration or modification to something that I already saw. And that just goes to show you that, you could you could look at a split squat pattern. We use split squat all day, so let's just keep rocking with it. And you could tell me this is what I want. This is what I'm getting out of it for my athlete. And I could see the same pattern and I could tell you, well, this is what I'm getting out of it. And it could be literally the same pattern. Or if you look at a split squat with a flexed like a forward leaning trunk versus an upright trunk, how is the split squat coached traditionally? I'm not sure these days, but if my spine is upright, I'm loading my back leg. If my spine is more flexed forward, I'm loading my front leg. But they're both known as a split squat. So I use that example because when you look at exercise, everything should be revolving around two questions. Who is in front of me? What is the athlete position? What sport do they play? What is their biomechanic analysis, etc.? All the information that we already know as trainers. That's the first thing. Number two, what is the goal behind the movement? I always say basketball players are not weightlifters. We're simply using the weight room to get basketball easier or less stressful. It's
Yeah.
that simple. So when you look at these exercises that I'm coming up with and I'm developing, you know, it all boils down to that. Those two things. Who's in front of me? Fred Van Vliet. He's a point guard. What are the demands? What are the goals that he's trying to achieve? And that's what shapes the exercise design or the creativity behind the exercise every single time. Very, and anytime you speak to a coach or you look at their movements that they prescribe, etc., they all should be able to say, this is my athlete and this is why we're doing this exercise for this athlete. And I have the luxury of doing that because I work with one NBA basketball player, which means I have time. If you're
Right.
working with 20 basketball players at once, you're not going to be able to do that. So, is my program better than someone who works with a team? No, it's not. It's just more specific to that player, which is why people gravitate towards that. But like some people will beat it up and say, that's not realistic. I work with 50 players at one time. Well, of course, duh. I get it, but I don't have that problem. So why you mad at me for? You're not mad at me. You mad at your situation. You know what I'm saying? Like we really have to.
Yeah.
And again, that has to do with why people are mad, right? Like, bro, you're not mad at
Yep.
me. So you know, the beauty of Instagram and social media and YouTube is it's a platform to share and to inspire, right? But
Hmm.
if you don't understand context, you have no right to apply any negative pressure to anybody. You have to understand where people are coming from before you demonize or put a bad stamp on something because I think that that's the problem with how we look at
Yep.
movement is we don't understand what the goal is. So
Yeah.
in a shorter way, I just always look at who it is, the biomechanics, and then obviously what the goal is behind the movement, and that's where that creativity comes from.
Yeah. No, that's so big, man. Like a lot of early on in my coaching career, like I'd want to be creative to be creative. That was my goal, right? Let me get most creative exercise I can think of. But then when you mention like there's a person in front of me too, like why would I? They're not here for that creative exercise. They're actually paying you for the outcome of that exercise, right? So
Yeah,
that's well said to think about like you just got to understand biomechanics, understand
really.
muscles, how things work, the psychology, right? And not saying that to simplify it, but like that's what you see. Those are the contexts that you create, right?
It's
So
simple, but it's complex.
it's
Another
simple, but
thing
it's
is like, all right,
complex.
you see a lot of single leg exercise from me, right? Like I'm a single leg exercise king, is what people call me, which I'm okay with because that's what I post a lot of, and I think it's super important. But if I wanted to induce a strength adaptation into an athlete, yes, I want a stable environment, of course. Like, duh, I get this. So we reduce what we see, you know what I'm saying, into
Yeah,
like, oh, that's who he is or that's who she is. And that's just such a big problem because that's not who people are. It's just what
yeah,
we're sharing.
right,
You know what I mean? And just get to know somebody before you criticize them
100%.
or before you have a feeling about anybody. Like you just got to get to know exactly why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours, but I appreciate the time. I don't want. I just looked at the time, like, man, I gotta get you on the rest of your schedule. So I don't want to. I want to take a lot of your time, but I know I shouldn't. So I know I mentioned the hoops app, man. Talk about it a little bit. Let's give
Well,
us a
let me show my logo off that my beautiful
yeah.
wife designed.
Oh
You
yeah, I
know what
love
I'm
that.
saying? GBG, the G's are mirroring each other. Again, that whole principle of when I'm great, you're great, JT. And then when you raise your level, guess what I do back to my level? We just elevate each other. So, we got wings and we're just flying away into greatness. GBG Hoops
What's the
currently,
symbol?
oh, the symbol is so it's Chinese. I'm not Chinese, I'm Korean. But Korean letters just didn't look good right here. So we went with the
Sure.
Chinese the
It
Chinese
looks dope.
character.
Love it.
Yeah, and it's a symbol for strength or
Okay.
courage, and obviously that speaks to who we are as people
Yeah.
and being brave as like Asian men in this space. We got to be brave, man.
Yeah.
It's tough out here, you know what I mean, to represent.
100%.
And the logo embodies our brand, but our product is the GBG Hoops app. It's actually out right now. We have a version 1 out. Um, maybe you can put the link in the show notes.
Got it. Don't worry
Um,
about that.
but we used a content container box to house the app, which just didn't do our brand justice. It wasn't great. You know what I'm saying? And we're all about greatness. We're all about maximizing potential. So we built an app from scratch. We built an app from scratch. It took the better part of a year and a half. We're gonna launch GBG Hoops Training App version 2 in September. And it's just going to be a completely revamped app. The UI is going to be better. The UX is going to be better. Um, the aesthetics, more programs, more workout of the days, just a whole overall facelift in 100 degrees fashion that we feel that people will be very, very happy to use and represent, because we want to build this community. It's really a community of people that all speak the same language of just trying to serve themselves and serve people along the way. And whether you're a basketball coach, athlete, parent, uh, strength and conditioning coach, we call them pickup legends. You know, Uncle Larry, who's 47, that think he can still hoop in the park. Um, everybody's kind of covered to make sure that they put their best foot forward from a physical standpoint, athleticism standpoint in this training app, so that people can be better prepared to maximize their greatness. So that's what our app is
Man,
about. It dropped
yep.
September, and we're really excited about it.
Hey, I could attest to that, man. Like I've been using that app since I knew about it, and you don't he doesn't charge enough for what the value
Oh
of
man,
that he puts out to it. So whatever it is, lock in with it because I've learned so much about it. Like I said, you helped me rehab my Achilles, which is like a something I don't take lightly. So that
yeah,
that to say like you said you want to impact and inspire. You
yeah.
do that to me, and I'm sure you do that with thousands, man. So definitely lock in with the app. I I want to take more time, but if you're down for a part two, we're gonna have to
We'll
schedule
just do
another
part
one.
two.
But hell yeah, let's do
100%,
that. Let's do that. But
100%.
no, final thoughts. Any final takeaways for the audience, my audience, your audience, before we jump off?
I really appreciate your questions and how they're really different from what I'm used to. So thank you for that. And I appreciate this platform. Anytime I can get on a space that allows me to talk about who we are as a company, as a brand, and also who I am as a human is always a good thing. Selfishly, but hopefully, I've managed to make somebody's day. To give somebody some inspiration, because that's what I'm all about, man. Just helping
Yeah,
people.
love that. Well, man, Mike G, I appreciate you. Yeah, we'll make sure we put all the notes into the on the pod, and
Okay,
yeah, part two, we'll get you on again.
coming soon. Thank you so much, JT. Appreciate you, brother.